What if both capitalism and socialism are fundamentally outdated? What if capitalism and socialism aren't ideological opposites, but twin offspring of the exact same constraint? Scarcity.
What if we got our energy from space? Our world needs clean energy. It's no longer a preference, but a necessity to keep up with the demands of the world's economies. Fossil fuels can only become more expensive. Humanity may not be too far away from harnessing the uninterrupted power of the sun from space in the not too distant future.
For over 2 centuries, humanity has been locked in an economic and ideological tug-of-war. On one side, there's capitalism, free markets, capital accumulation, and wage-based labor. On the other, there's socialism, collective ownership, state allocation, and central planning. We treat these two economic systems like fundamental laws of physics. We act like they're the only two choices on the political menu. That's about to change. What if both capitalism and socialism are fundamentally outdated? What if capitalism and socialism aren't ideological opposites, but twin offspring of the exact same constraint? Scarcity. When superintelligent AI, or artificial general intelligence, renders human physical and cognitive labor essentially free, both systems break down. To survive what comes next, humanity will have to upgrade from managing scarcity to building a post-scarcity Type 1 economic system and civilization.
Nikolai Kardashev, a Soviet astrophysicist in the 1960s, was frustrated trying to analyze signals from intelligent life in outer space. What are we looking for? So he began to rank civilizations on a scale of Type 1, Type 2, Type 3. A Type 1 civilization is truly planetary. They absorb all the light coming in from their mother star, and they control all planetary forms of energy. For example, they might be able to modify the weather. They may not be able to control earthquakes and volcanoes. That's Type 1.
What if our economic struggle isn't a political problem at all? What if it's an energy scaling problem? Let's take a look at the astrophysics of it. The sun contains 99.86% of all the mass in our entire solar system. Every planet, moon, asteroid, and human being combined makes up just a tiny fraction of 1% of leftover matter.
But the Earth only receives about half a billionth of the sun's energy. So the sun is truly enormous. The sun is 99.8% of all mass in the solar system. So sometimes people will ask me, like, what about, other power sources of power on Earth? Like, what about fusion on Earth? Well, that is unfortunately very small because the sun is 99.8% of mass in the solar system. And Jupiter is about 0.1%, and Earth is in the miscellaneous category. We are, I think it's Carl Sagan, I think might have said, Earth is like a tiny dust mote in a vast darkness. Very, very small. The sun is enormous. So the way to actually scale civilization is to scale power in space. This is necessarily true because we actually capture such a tiny amount of the sun's energy on Earth because we're just this tiny dust mote. Another way to think of it is roughly like electricity production on Earth of all of civilization is only about a trillionth of the sun's energy, which means if you increase civilizational power output by 1,000,000, you would still only be a millionth of the sun's energy.
Because of that massive concentrated fusion reactor at the center of our solar system, otherwise known as the sun, Earth is bombarded with over 170 petawatts of solar power every single second. That's more energy in 1 hour than humanity consumes in an entire year. When we achieve Kardashev Level 1, harnessing 100% of the energy hitting the Earth, energy becomes essentially free. And when energy is free, scarcity dies. And when scarcity dies, it takes capitalism and socialism with it.
Renewable sources like wind and waves contain a lot of energy, but the amount is piddling compared to the amount of solar energy that hits the Earth. And that makes sense. Ultimately, almost every source of energy in the atmosphere or biosphere comes from the sun. So we actually have a very easy way to estimate the energy use of a Type 1 civilization. It's the amount of solar energy hitting the entire planet every day. And directly collecting solar energy may also be the easiest way to access that power. So a sun-powered Type 1 will be our first consideration. So the average solar irradiance at the Earth is 1361 watts per meter squared, and our planet intercepts that energy over a disk with the Earth's radius, giving us an upper limit of 1.7 times 10 to the power of 17 watts to play with, so let's say 10 to the 17 watts. Let's put this in perspective. We currently use around 10 to the power of 13 watts globally, again 10,000 times shy of our Type 1 goal. Collecting anywhere close to the 10 to the 17 watts in solar power is going to take a lot more than covering the planet in modern solar panels, not that we'd want to do that anyway. The first program in upgrading our Kardashev scale is improving our solar collection capabilities.
To understand why socialism and capitalism collapse under a post-scarcity Type 1 civilization, let's look at what pricing actually measures. In capitalism, the cost of almost everything, a loaf of bread, a smartphone, a gallon of clean water, it all boils down to three inputs: raw materials, labor, and the energy required to transform those materials into a product. If the energy cost drops to zero, the marginal cost of producing food, desalination, recycling, and fabrication crashes towards zero. Capitalism's price mechanism relies on supply being restricted. If supply approaches infinity, market pricing breaks down. But socialism can't survive a post-scarcity environment either. Socialism is a tool for rationing scarce resources through collective ownership or state planning. But why ration something that's as abundant as atmospheric air? When energy is virtually free, you don't need a central planning committee to decide who gets clean water, indoor vertical farming, or housing. Rationing paper currency or issuing welfare vouchers in an era of infinite thermodynamic capacity is like trying to issue coupons to breathe. So as we've seen, back in 1964, astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev created a scale to classify civilizations based on how much energy they can harness. Right now, humanity resides at about a type 0.73 on the Kardashev scale. We rely on digging up tiny pockets of decayed ancient sunlight, otherwise known as fossil fuels, or burning finite earth-bound resources. So in a way, we're kind of like beggars sitting on a gold mine fighting over pennies. This is where artificial general intelligence can play a role, not as the ultimate solution, but as the engine that designs the quantum leap we'll need to make in order to achieve Kardashev Level 1. Artificial general intelligence, AGI, it gives us the automation and engineering power to build orbital solar arrays, next generation fusion reactors, and planetary scale power grids. But energy, that's the real currency.
Picture an immense rectangle of glass floating in space, 10 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. sparkling blue with vast arrays of silicon solar panels. Its skeleton is a vast network of triangular trusses, each the size of an apartment building, welded end to end. This is the original concept for a solar power satellite. It hangs over one spot on Earth permanently, like a fixed star in the sky, thanks to its geostationary orbit. It will face the sun for 30 years while shrugging off all forms of damage with its bulk. 12% of the sunlight that reaches it will be converted into electricity, totaling 8.5 gigawatts. That's as much as 20 natural gas power plants or 8 nuclear reactors. All that electricity is directed into radio frequency generator modules, the same type used in cell towers, but arranged into a grid 1 kilometer wide. Together, they form an antenna that can direct a microwave beam down to the Earth 35,800 kilometers below. That beam is how the satellite powers our planet. It is met on our end by a receiver called a rectifying antenna, and because the beam spreads over its journey to Earth, the receiver has to be 10 kilometers in diameter. A rectifying antenna is merely a grid of wires connected to simple diodes, the same technology used to get a signal from contactless cards or RFID tags today, but scaled up. Such a receiver could be built anywhere, as it does not block sunlight, works in the rain, and the energy it receives is spread out over such a large area that it could never hurt anyone. 5 gigawatts remain after converting the microwaves back into electricity. One solar power station of this design can power 5 cities the size of Boston.
So here's what happens when you combine artificial general intelligence automation with Kardashev Level 1 energy output. Take a look at desalination in agriculture. Now we can run massive desalination plants, turning oceans into fresh water, to green deserts, and power automated indoor hydroponic farms. Food becomes a public utility. And look, I'll speak to this more in a moment, but I do understand that there are human behaviors and political considerations that we need to get over in order to make this the ideal situation. I'm cognizant of that, but right now I'm focused on examining this issue just based on the technology and the economics of it for now. Take molecular recycling. With unlimited heat and power, recycling becomes 100% efficient. Old waste is broken down into raw elements to synthesize new products. And I love the sound of that because that fictional construct in the Star Trek universe is what actually lends itself to those characters and the Star Trek world being post-scarcity.
One pan-fried catfish.
The replicator. So we would be able to achieve this level of post-scarcity in the event we were able to engage in 100% efficient modular recycling. But solving the engineering and energy equation, that's just half the battle. Now, I brought this up a moment ago. For a Kardashev Level 1 economy to actually work, human psychology has to fundamentally evolve. And our evolution as a species has always lagged behind the development or our capability to develop technology. For well over a century, industrial psychology and consumer marketing have trained large swaths of humanity to tie our self-worth to material accumulation. Consumerism weaponizes scarcity. We buy luxury goods not for their utility, but to signal status, dominance, and security over others in a competitive hierarchy. In an era of infinite energy and automated manufacturing, consumer marketing for material goods becomes completely obsolete. When anyone can replicate a luxury item or materialize a home with the push of a button, accumulating stuff carries zero social status. So then, what becomes of human ambition? Human status will necessarily shift from what you own to what you contribute. In a post-scarcity world, true prestige won't come from a bank account or a sports car. It'll come from scientific breakthroughs, artistic mastery, technological innovation, and philosophical insight. Ambition won't be measured by how much you extract from society, but how far you push the boundaries of human knowledge and civilizational progress. I am the ultimate capitalist. Socialism as an experiment has been tried and it has failed. I abhor crony capitalism and I also disdain conspicuous consumerism. However, capitalism and socialism were necessary draft versions of human organization, but they were built for a more primitive world where everything was seen as limited. The sun holds 99.86% of our solar system's mass, radiating unlimited potential outward in every direction. Our ultimate challenge is not going to be winning an economic debate between 19th century political or economic philosophies. It's building the technology to catch the light that's emanating from this star and developing the maturity to know what to do with that energy once we capture it and harness it. I'm really interested in what you think. Put it in the comments, and I will talk to you soon.